Rayhana's Saudi sponsor, Sheikh Ahmed began his obsessive search for his beloved Indian maidservant and her daughter at the Jeddah International Airport. When the airport officer checked his computer, he did not find any record of a Rayhana Khan or Ifat Khan arriving from the country of India. Sheikh Ahmed checked with 3 other airport offices before he came to terms he had lost love again. The first thought that arose in his head was that his former car driver had fooled him once again. He thought that the owner of the traveling agency Muhammad Khan had failed to locate Rayhana and her daughter, and then to hide his inadequacies, he came up with this unbelievable story that Rayhana and her daughter traveled from Bombay to Jeddah without their passports. He concluded Muhammad Khan fabricated the whole story because he feared that he might break up his partnership with him. He remembered that the Sudanese boy Babakir told him he had found Rayhana and gave her the tickets, visas, and money he had sent to her, but he did not say she actually made it to the airport to make her flight to Saudi Arabia. He also recalled at the Worli passport office he was informed that the 2 passports were reissued and mailed to the office of Muhammad Tours and Travels instead of Babakir's address. When Sheikh Ahmed reached this resolve, he then regretted his hasty decision to punish his Indian client so quickly. He knew he could not go back to Bombay so soon to search for his beloved maidservant again, for he was afraid that if he returned to India so soon, Muhammad Khan might hire Gondas to attack him in retaliation for his public humiliation. He also knew that Muhammad Khan had spies everywhere, and he would know the minute he arrived at the Bombay Sahara International Airport. Rayhana and her daughter's arrival was not entered into the computer system at the Jeddah International Airport because they were considered illegal aliens. Therefore, their arrival was considered to be an illegal entry and a criminal offense. The case was transferred to the airport security and passed on to the police division. Sheikh Ahmed would have known that if he had checked with the airport security. The desperate lover had lost all hope and thought he would never find or see his Layla again. The old Saudi man believed that he had fallen in love with his prospective Indian maidservant at first sight. For that very same reason, he had spent huge amount of money to bring her to his country and enjoy her beauty and sexy body. When this one-sided love affair happened, the old Saudi was 70 years old and the pretty Indian maidservant was 27. The old geezer sat down on one of the airport benches and sorrowfully took Rayhana's passport from out of his suitcase and peered at her photo when tears began to stream down his cheeks. Her innocent face and marvelous beauty troubled his heart and made him feel like screaming out in pain to release all the heartache accumulating inside him. Staring at the photo of his beloved Layla, his heart bled and tears watered his long beard. He blamed all his troubles on his wicked ex-chauffeur, and he began working out 2 possible scenarios in his mind: how to find his missing Layla and how to give Muhammad Khan a double dose of revenge. While the distraught lover was sitting at the airport and trying to find a way to locate his missing Layla, his cell phone began to ring. He removed the phone from his pocket and looked at the number. He did not recognize the phone number calling him, and so he didn't bother to answer it. The cell phone continued to ring and he waited to see whether or not the caller was going to leave a message. He suddenly heard a harsh voice saying, "This is Jeddah Airport Police. This message is for Sheikh Faiz bin Ahmed. It is regarding your Indian maidservant Rayhana Khan and her daughter Ifat Khan. Your maidservant arrived in Jeddah along with her 7-year-old daughter without their passports. They were arrested by law enforcement authority and transferred to the Jeddah Detention for Women. For further information please contact the Jeddah Police Authority." Sheikh Ahmed had never kissed his cell phone before that day. He felt as if his Allah saw his true heart and had mercy upon him. Allah had sent an angel to guide his path to the most exquisite object of his desire. He immediately jumped on his feet as if he were an 18-year-old soccer player. First, he decided to go confirm the message he had received with the airport police. Nonetheless, in a second thought, he dismissed that idea and decided to go directly to the Jeddah jail and effect the release of his beloved Rayhana and her little daughter. Sheikh Ahmed said to himself, "Why should I waste my time going to the airport police authority? I have already received the good news from them and I should go directly and get my poor beloved Rayhana out of jail with her little girl." Sheikh Ahmed married many Saudi women, but he did not love any of them. The very first time he had ever fallen in love, it was a one-sided love affair. His former wife, Christy, an Indian Christian, was the first woman he had ever fallen madly in love with. His second love was Rayhana Khan, an Indian Muslim woman, and it was also a one-sided love affair. His present 3 Saudi wives were old, and their children had already given him grandchildren. His 4th Saudi wife, however, was 32 years old. According to Arab criteria, the woman was considered too old for sex once she was 30 years of age. The most desirable marriage age for a female was somewhere between 9 years old to 13 years of age. In big cities, the age would range between 14 to 19 years. Arabs believed that when a woman reached 20 years old, as she continued to grow, her body would become rigid and less flexible day by day. Virginity is very important, very essential, very crucial, and imperative for marrying a female in the Arab world. A female whose virginity had been lost or stolen would either be killed on the wedding night or sent back to her parents. In some Arab tribes, the bridegroom or his mother would wrap his or her finger with a white handkerchief and insert it into the vagina of the bride. If the bride were a virgin, the finger and handkerchief would come out stained red with blood because the hymen would bleed when it was broken. If the bride were already deflowered, the handkerchief would come out wet by the moisture of the vagina. In that case, the bride did not pass the virginity test. In some backward Muslim countries, the virginity test might be done before marriage whenever the girl exhibited suspicious behavior or conduct, or if there was a rumor the girl was in love with a boy. A girl in this case would be subjected to a virginity test. Her mother, aunt, or other close relatives or friends, neighbors or reliable old women, would secretly conduct the test. It was a local test in which the girl would be stripped of all her clothes. When she became fully naked, she would be asked to immerse her body in a tub filled with water. The water had to cover her body up to her waist. Then, she would be asked to cease from any movement and hold her breath. Her examiners would examine the surface of the water to see if there were any bubbles. When the expert examiners were fully satisfied there was not a single bubble to arise or be seen on the surface of the water, the girl would pass the virginity test. The virginity qualifiers believed that the deflowered vagina would suck in some water and that would cause bubbles to come up. I have no clue whether that was the correct way to test the virginity of a female. There was a test even more silly and primitive than that. Some people believed the virginity test could be carried out without the knowledge of the intended test taker. This kind of test was common among men. According to this test, it was proof positive if a girl was either a virgin or not through her footprints on the sand. If her footprints showed full marks of her feet on the sand, then she was not a virgin. If her footprints revealed half marks of her feet on the sand, then she was a virgin. The danger to these kind of primitive ideas and idiotic myths and old wives' tales is that many innocent girls might not find men to marry them, or worse than that, they might get slain by a relative in an honor killing. The girl might also lose her virginity through some sickness or heavy bleeding due to menstruation, or some girls might break their hymens accidentally while they were masturbating. Masturbation wasn't forbidden in Islam. There is not a single verse in the Quran or a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad that forbade masturbation. There was a fatwa issued by a Muslim scholar who encouraged Muslim women to masturbate when they had a strong desire for sex but had no husbands to satisfy them. According to the fatwa, if a Muslim woman felt a great need or desire for sex and she had no husband, then she could take a cranebij leather shaped like a penis and insert it inside her vagina and rub it until she got satisfied. The greatest Muslim scholar, Ibn Qayyim writes, if a woman does not have a husband, and her lust becomes strong, then some of our scholars say, it is permissible for the woman to take an cranebij, which is a piece of leather worked until it becomes shaped like a penis, and insert it in herself. She may also use a cucumber. If some religious followers in India were accused of worshipping the private parts of males, some Arab men should also be accused of worshipping a woman's virginity. A woman's vagina to the Arabs is like the cross to Christians. In fact, the black stone, which Muslim pilgrims touch and kiss during their Hajj ritual, is a leftover tradition from ancient pagan idol worship of the female's private parts. The ancient Arabs used to worship the woman's vagina, and hence the black stone was shaped like a female's private part. In those days, the Hajj was called hak, rubbing of the body. Pagan women used to rub their bodies on the Kaaba and apply menstrual blood on the black stone to increase their fertility. The pagan men and women would perform the ritual while they were bare naked. Women used to perform the Hajj during the night and men during the day. Today Muslims perform the same ritual without wearing underwear. Islam incorporated the pagan rituals of the hak with slight variations. The hak was a kind of temple prostitution. Women offered themselves to men as part of their pagan idol worship, which consisted of many male gods and female goddesses. The black stone was considered the cornerstone of temple worship revolving around female prostitution. Although Islam removed the idols from the pagan temple, one idol remained. The black stone was the only idol spared, and the hak was reborn as the Hajj. Pagan hak worshippers were now born again Muslim reverts, and worshippers of the one moon god, Allah. But, the pagan rites and rituals, and immoral practices between men and women continued and remained the same. An Egyptian scholar said that the black stone was in the shape of a woman's vagina because in those days, the pagans worshipped the private parts of the female. That is why women used to apply the blood of their menstruation on the vagina-shaped black stone. Today, a Muslim female might not be able to reach the stone due to the crowd, but she was required to point her right hand towards it from afar. The Muslim man had to kiss the black stone at least once during his 7 circles around the Kaaba. The kissing of the black stone had no spiritual significance, but Muslim men do it because the Prophet Muhammad used to kiss it whenever he performed his Hajj. The second Caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab, said while he was kissing the black stone, "I know you are just stone and can do no good or bad to me, but I am kissing you because I saw the Messenger of Allah kissing you." Umar may not have known why the Prophet Muhammad had kissed the stone, but for the pagans, kissing the black stone was a form of worshipping the woman's vagina. Muslim men today are continuing this pagan rite and worshipping this organ of the female body. Until today, Muslim men go around the black stone and kiss it while they are semi-naked. Returning now to our main topic of the importance of a woman's virginity, some Muslims in France began to pay huge amounts of money to doctors in an attempt to return their wives to a virginal state. A Muslim man in Paris was prepared to pay a French doctor $5,000 in order to restore his wife's virginity. He enjoyed repeating the process of deflowering his wife. By doing so, he presupposed that this might be a substitute for polygamy, which the French law wouldn't allow him to practice in France. Sheikh Ahmed seemed to have discovered that there was something more lovable and enjoyable in a woman than her vagina and virginity. On his many visits to India, his attitude toward women improved somewhat. He discovered that there was nothing better than a woman giving herself to a man to please him. Even if it was a one-sided love, the love of a good woman would give a man the happiest days of his life. In this way, his first experience at love with his Indian wife, Christy, made his life so wonderful, he came to love life to the fullest measure. Before that, he was such a materialistic and selfish man. He used to use women for sexual satisfaction but had never loved them nor had been loved by them. After his first love experience, he discovered a great secret, which had been hidden from all the men of his country. He eventually came to realize that a man could not possibly or practically love more than one woman at a time. So, he discovered that polygamy was a kind of abuse to women and a torture for the man. Having 2, 3, or 4 women at the same time would mean countless troubles for the man, and his life would be a living hell. Rival wives would fight to be the alpha female, and this would go on day and night and cause much misery for the male. He would wish he was in hell wearing a pair of gasoline underwear. Instead, he had to live with these demon-possessed women in real life and wish for death in the afterlife as an escape from the turmoil and conflict in his own house. Alas, whereas his first love story was a one-sided love affair and ended in a train wreck, Nonetheless, the joy and happiness he had felt during that short-lived love affair would never be forgotten. He cherished and treasured it in his heart for a very long time. He longed for a similar experience no matter how it would turn out. Then, his luck brought him another much beloved Indian woman. As Mahatma Gandhi once said, everyone is a lover and looking for a beloved. The old Saudi man fell in love with the slum woman at first sight. If he loved Christie 1,000 times over, he loved Rehana 1,000,000 times more. From the time she met him at the gate of India, the fires of love were rekindled in his heart. He believed that she had reawakened in him the power of love. When he was in school, he read about the love of a woman in thousands of poems in classic Arabic literature without experiencing it. No people had written more beautifully or wonderfully about the love of a man and a woman than in the poems of the ancient Arabs. Sadly, once Islam was founded, it forbade any relationship whatsoever between men and women before marriage. The restrictions Islam placed on the woman resulted in untold evils and despicable punishments to women known as honor killings. Before Islam, the Arabs delighted in the love, romance, and beauty of the woman. They wrote the renowned 7 poems known as Mu'allaqat. These were very sweet and deliberate writings of love. The poetic writings were so loved and revered by the Arabs of pre-Islamic periods, they began to hang these popular poems on the holy Kaaba at Mecca, which is known today as the House of Allah. Islam outlawed love and destroyed that golden period of Arabian poetry reflecting the intimacies between a man and a woman. Sheikh Ahmed read thousands of poems and writings of ancient Arab lovers and poets and memorized them by heart. Even so, love did not make sense to him until he began to go out of his man-dominated society and see beautiful young women walking all alone on the streets of Bombay with their faces and hair exposed. He even saw young girls walking in short pants with half of their bodies nude and visibly exposed. He also visited the paradise city of Goa and saw the beautiful young Indian women in their bikinis lying on the golden sand of the warm sunny beaches. From afar, he could make out whether a woman or girl had a nice body or a beautiful face or not. In his country, women were wrapped up head to foot in a clothing called a burqa and nothing could be seen of her except her black cocoon. In actual fact, the Saudi woman is like a watermelon you would buy at the supermarket. One could not know whether she is beautiful or had a nice body until he purchased her first and then opened her up. She is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you are going to get. Some you like and some are absolutely awful. The most beautiful creation of God is covered from head to toe in a black coffin. The style of dress being the niqab or the burqa, however, the curtains in a funeral parlor are much more pleasant to look at. The queen of God's creation is now a phantom of evil. A ghost in the minds of men, she should be seen and not heard. Sheikh Ahmed arrived at the Jeddah jail with the 2 passports in his hand as if they were won in the green card lottery and issued by the United States of America. He came with the attitude of receive and release. He expected that he would show the 2 passports and receive his beloved woman and her daughter. After all, he had a million plans running through his crooked mind. When the police told him that there were no detainees by those names, he felt as if someone threw a bucket of cold water on him. He argued with the police and insisted that they were mistaken until they threatened to throw him behind bars if he didn't leave. Totally pissed off, the enraged lover left the Jeddah jail, headed directly back to the airport and demanded an explanation and accurate information about his beloved maidservant and her daughter. The airport police confirmed the information he received on his phone. They said they had no idea where the 2 police officers had taken his Indian maidservant and her daughter. They also refused to reveal their names or the number of the police car that was used to transfer the 2 Indian detainees. This last bit of information brought Sheikh Ahmed to his knees and his renewed and short-lived hopes to a dead end. He was back to square one. Once again, the old Saudi managed to crawl back upon his feet and dragged himself back to the same bench he had sat upon before he received the phone message from the airport police. While he sat, this time he was not trying to figure out how to punish his bitter enemy, Muhammad Khan, but rather, how to find his beloved Rehana and her daughter. Suddenly, a great dread came over him and his heart was filled with gloom. He started to murmur to no one in particular. More than fear, sheer terror paralyzed both his body and mind and made him speak twisted things. Every single hair on his body stood up. In fact, he had no hair on his bald head, but he was a very hairy man. His whole body was full of hair as if he was a wolf in sheep's covering. Pale, reddish hair covered his hands, feet, chest, back, and his neck in front and from behind, not including his mustache and long beard. Fear, dread, and terror pained his heart and physically impaired his ability to function when he began to visualize the body of his beloved lying in the desert underneath the unforgiving heat of the sun. Sheikh Ahmed feared that the two Saudi police officers saw the marvelous beauty and sexually appealing body of Rehana and decided to rape her. They then killed her to cover over their crime and dumped her body in the desert. He imagined that by now, the hot gusty sand winds had already buried her body and he would never see her again. He concluded they had also raped her daughter and killed her too. Sheikh Ahmed knew that Saudi men could not be trusted with a beautiful woman, especially if she had her face, hands, and legs open to the public. He knew in his country, a man would not spare a female if he found her all alone, even in an elevator. Therefore, he concluded that the two Saudi police officers took advantage of his beautiful Indian maidservant and hence, instead of taking her to prison, they took her for their own pleasure. They took her out of the city, raped her and her little daughter and murdered them, leaving their dead bodies to rot in the desert. The old Saudi had never cried so much in all his life. He had not cried this much even the day his Indian Christian wife, Christy, threw him out of his house in Bombay and in his place brought her Indian boyfriend, Bobby. The old geezer began to sob uncontrollably, putting his face in the palm of his hands trying to hide his tears. Instead, his tears exposed his weakness and the deep sorrow rent in his heart. The fear of Sheikh Ahmed is based upon practical evidence. Hundreds of maidservants from Asian countries who come alone to work in this male-dominated society get raped every year. It is a society where the woman is considered to be meat and imprisoned in the house and never allowed to come out. And if she is allowed to step out of the house, she had to have a male for protection or she will be raped. Female foreigners who come from free societies are always the victims of this unholy Arab empire of rapists and pedophiles. In a Western country such as Australia, a Muslim imam justified the rape of white girls by Muslim Lebanese men. I have quoted this before, but allow me to refer to it once again. I believe this is the right place to put it. The Australian Islamic imam and Mufti Sheikh Tajuddin al-Hilali, the nation's most senior Muslim cleric, said in his public sermon, which he delivered before 5,000 Muslim worshippers in Sydney on the occasion of the Eid festival, that women are just meat, and men have no more obligation to exercise restraint when they see women than a cat does when meat is left out in the open. The Imam was speaking about the increasing social phenomena of young Australian women getting raped regularly by Lebanese and other Muslim immigrants in Sydney, Australia. He blamed the victims rather than the rapists. According to him, the Australian non-Muslim women, i.e. female infidels, go out in public around town on the streets with exposed bodies without wearing niqabs, and the Muslim men see them as exposed meat, and that is why they rape them. To justify his theory, he gave an example in the case of a cat when it finds meat on the street eats it up. For him, the cat could not be blamed, but the person who dropped the meat on the street is the one that should be blamed. Therefore, he concluded his talk by saying the rapist should not be blamed at all, but the woman or girl who leaves her body uncovered is wholly to blame. What an evil man he is to teach these things as a religious leader and instructor of the masses. He ought to be locked up for life for encouraging men to commit crimes against women and commit evil deeds against his fellow men and society. Even the 5,000 Muslims who listened to his sermon and did not object should be kicked out of Australia and all the West and all free democratic societies. They should not be allowed to flourish amidst productive, thriving nations, lands, and peoples, but returned to their own ever-increasing closed sick-minded oppressive governments. They should go back to their own country and lands where the women are treated like meat, covered from head to foot in oppression and imprisoned in the home like criminals. The most dangerous places for women on earth are in Muslim countries. In the West, a young woman can live by herself in a building full of men, and it will be unlikely that anyone will knock on her door or break in to rape her. In a Muslim country, it is not permitted for a single woman to live alone. No property owner is allowed by law to give an apartment for rent to an unmarried woman. Even in a hotel, the law will not allow a single woman, whatever her age, to check in if she has no husband, father, brother, or an adult son with her. They have to produce official government documents to prove their relationship before they will be allowed to stay together in a hotel. If a couple wanted to stay in a hotel, they had to produce their marriage certificate. A father had to show official documentation to prove that the woman who came with him was his daughter. In 1993, my sister and I were denied a room in a hotel at Cairo. We had our passports, but they refused to accept them as proof because my sister and I had different fathers, but same mother. When all hotels refused to allow us to check in, we were fortunate to be able to stay with a Sudanese family in their apartment. In Saudi Arabia, a woman would be raped inside an elevator if she dared leave her apartment to visit her neighbor.